Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Law Schoolers. In this episode, we are continuing our discussion on secure transactions, and we are continuing our discussion on priority. Today, we are going to be talking about the priority of who wins between a secured party and a buyer. And what do I mean by a buyer? This is somebody who is purchasing the collateral that the secured party has an interest in. So who's going to win? Who has priority if things fall through? The secured party or the buyer? Well, the general rule is that the secured party is going to, if they have that security interest, they are going to have that interest in that collateral over the purchaser by a third party. This is going to be true unless the secured party has authorized the collateral to be sold free and clear of all other interests. So, in other words, secured party is going to win unless the secured party gives permission to the buyer that they can purchase it free and clear of any other interests. That's the secured party giving away its priority, or if another exception applies. That's the second way that a secured party may lose to the buyer. So what are some of these exceptions? And that's what I'm going to spend the focus, the majority of this episode talking about. Well, there are three main exceptions. The secured party's interest is going to be unperfected. In that situation, the buyer will win. The buyer makes the purchase in an ordinary course of business. And then there's also something known as the garage sale rule. So these are the three exceptions that we're going to be talking on. Let's start with the unperfected security interest of the secured party. Well, according to Section 317B, a buyer is going to have priority over the secured party if the buyer gives value and takes delivery of the collateral. So this means if you're going to take delivery, it needs to be tangible. So value over tangible property that the buyer receives. The buyer doesn't know about the security interest, and the security interest was not perfected by the secured party. Those three elements must be present if the buyer is going to win over the secured party, at least with this exception. Now let's talk about the ordinary course of business. So a buyer is going to win in the ordinary course of business over the secured party. According to Section 9320A, a buyer is going to take the collateral free and clear, meaning they're going to win over the secured party, if they are acting in the ordinary course of business, even if they know about the security interest and the perfection status of the other party. So, let's say exception 1 doesn't work because the security interest is perfected by the secured party. Well, if the ordinary course of business purchase is made, well, then it can still overcome the secured party's interest in that collateral, at least when it comes to priority. So what is a purchase in the ordinary course of business? Well, ordinary course of business is defined in Article 1, Section 1201, subsection B9. So these are definitions to the UCC. They outline several requirements for what is a purchase in the ordinary course of business. So the purchase needs to be in goods. It needs to be made in good faith. It needs to be made without knowledge that the sale violates the rights of another person in the goods. That is, the purchase is made without knowledge of violating the secured party's rights in this situation. It needs to be in the ordinary course, meaning it's normal, it's nothing abnormal, from a merchant selling goods of that kind. So the collateral needs to be purchased from a merchant selling goods that the purchaser is actually purchasing. And the purchaser needs to properly take possession or have the right to take possession according to Article 2 of the UCC. So what's this mean? It means a purchase in the ordinary course of business is going to be a purchase of inventory. This is going to be a buyer who is purchasing from a merchant some of that merchant's inventory that is protected by a secured interest. In that situation, if it's inventory and is purchased in the ordinary course of business, well, then the buyer can take priority over the secured party in that collateral, free and clear on that collateral's interest. Okay, what's the third exception? This is known as the garage sale rule. If consumer goods are in possession of a consumer and is then sold to another consumer as consumer goods, this is like a garage sale, because if you think about it, a consumer purchases, let's say, a lawnmower as a consumer for the purpose of using the lawnmower to mow their property, and then that consumer goes and holds a garage sale to sell the lawnmower. Well, then this consumer is selling consumer goods to a consumer. So this acts like a garage sale. If it's a garage sale, well, then the buyer is going to take the goods free and clear of any security interest. There are certain elements for this rule to actually apply. First, the buyer doesn't know about the security interest. Second, the buyer buys for value. And third, the secured party does not file a financing statement before the purchase was made. This rule is described fully in Section 9.320b. And really what I should say with this rule is most of the time, the garage sale rule isn't going to apply. The value of goods that is purchased by a consumer, used as security, and then being sold as another consumer good doesn't happen very often. And it's because typically these goods are lower value goods that most consumers are not going to be using as collateral. So the garage rule doesn't apply very often. But that's our general rule between who's going to win with a secured party and a buyer. The general rule is that the secured party is going to win unless they agree that the collateral is going to be sold free and clear of their security interest or an exception applies. And those exceptions that we talked about is if the secured party's interest is unperfected, if the buyer makes the purchase in the ordinary course of business, or, as the garage sale rule says, if that purchase is made by a consumer and as a consumer good and then sold by that consumer to another consumer as a consumer good. But that's everything for this material. Hope you have a good one. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Law Schoolers Podcast. If you enjoyed the show or the material shared on the Law Schoolers website, you can support Law Schoolers by becoming a patron at patreon.com/lawschoolers. I also wanted to provide a quick disclaimer. Nearly all Law Schoolers material is unedited due to the sake of time and a desire to keep the content as raw as possible. Additionally, the material is only provided for educational purposes and is not to be used as legal advice. If the material is used as legal advice, Law Schoolers is not liable for any legal outcomes. Thank you again for enjoying the show.